Welcome to the Murali End. My name's Mark Machado, joining you from London. I'm joined by my cousin across the pond, the Professor of Cricketology, Dominic Machado, and we're joined by Sri Lanka's #1 journalist and the voice of Sri Lankan cricket, Estelle Vasudevan. Estelle, firstly, thanks for taking the time to join us. I know you've been busy with the Tri-Series. Me and Dom have been up at all odd hours of the morning in the UK and the US, watching what's been going on with women's cricket. In Sri Lanka, there's been loads going on. Started off good, but it started off bad, but it's got very, very good, very, very quickly. We'll get into that. We'll also talk a little bit about what's going on with the LPL. There's two teams have lost their owners since we last spoke to you last Monday, and we'll have a look at how our boys have been getting on in the IPL, the Indian Premier League. And of course, if you're watching or listening, then do drop us your comments, drop us your thoughts. If you're listening in the audio feed and the podcast app, you can listen to us on Spotify and Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. I never plug that. I should. Then you leave us your comments retrospectively. If you're watching the live feed on YouTube or on Facebook, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We need all the subscribers we can get. We're trying to build something over here. And leave us your thoughts and opinions and views and questions in the comments feed. We love hearing from you, as long as they're not misogynistic or racist or anything like that, or in any form of bigotry. Then we'll have them on board. Estelle, straight to you though. What was it like being inside the stadium when Sri Lanka beat India for the first time in an ODI in years and years and years?
Yeah, it was awesome to watch it. I thought I think kind of came as a surprise to how well they chased that total down, because Sri Lanka had done so badly in that first game, particularly with the bat, right, against India, struggled to get to a good total. And it felt like at that point, the same old problems we'd seen a couple of years ago were back, that Sri Lanka were back to depending solely on Chamari, and that beyond that, they didn't really have anyone who could stand up and put on a partnership. I think, and we spoke about this off air as well, the most, like, the impressive thing is that you had different players standing up. If you look at the batting order, you got runs in the last two games from Harshita, you got them from Hasini, you got from Kavisha, you got Nilakshi played the innings of her career in the last game. So that was really good to see, particularly with the batting, because we've seen bowlers stand up, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of the bowlers who've impressed as well. But that was great to watch. Crowd-wise, I'm a bit disappointing that there wasn't a bigger crowd to watch. They missed out on two really good games during the last week. Good cricket. I think that's the most important thing, not more than Sri Lanka winning, but like really good cricket and high quality teams. So unfortunate, but hopefully in the last few games we'll have a bigger crowd to come cheer the players on.
Yeah, if you're in the Colombo area, in the vicinity, and I mean, when you say in the Colombo area, that in Sri Lanka, that means anywhere within about 3 hours of Colombo is considered kind of close enough to get to it. Then it is free to get in, right, Estelle? You can just kind of turn up, I'd imagine, and get down.
Just turn up.
Just turn up, get down, get involved, be part of it. 9 months ago when we won the Asia Cup, the crowds just kept in Dambulla as well. Dambulla, which is in the middle of nowhere, right? That's about as remote as part of the world as you can get. Every win, Sri Lanka got bigger and bigger crowds. I know this isn't an Asia Cup, but it's still reasonably significant. We're meant to be a big cricket playing nation. Let's back the girls. If I could, I would. I'd definitely be there. Yeah. It'd be great. Dom, the last two episodes of Murali End we've done, the live stream last week after they'd lost to India in the first game, and the week before when we got the squad announced, one of the big questions was about the kind of batting lineup, who's going to bat where. We questioned Hasani's re-inclusion in the team, and then when Rishmi didn't play against India, we talked about that a lot. We kind of had two theories. One was that essentially they're trying to kind of mix things up and see what happens. Second was that actually maybe they've got an idea and plan here. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it was probably, essentially everything in life is somewhere on that scale, right? It's actually kind of more planned than we'd like to, that we probably wanted to give them credit for early on. And actually, kind of 3 games into this tournament from a Sri Lanka perspective, putting Hasni Pereira at the top of the batting order has totally worked. Vishmi is suddenly looks like she's kind of figuring out how to play this format. And on top of all that, I think almost the biggest thing, and we talked about this off the back of the Asia Cup win because it was starting to emerge then, is it doesn't feel like it's Charmery or bust anymore, right?
Yeah. So I think that, as Estelle said, and as you just said, Mark, the contributions from everyone in the batting order, everyone getting a partnership together, right? Because that's kind of the way one-day cricket works, right? Either you need 2 big partnerships or you need a lot of sort of medium-sized partnerships when you chase down a total. And the women worked really hard to build these partnerships in different ways, right? Players, I think Vishmi opening had a little bit of a struggle, but she was still kind of able to sit there and grind things out and get 30 runs. And those 30 runs proved immensely valuable. Hasni, whose inclusion we were questioning, has looked really good, especially against South Africa, finding the boundary early and getting that chase off to a really good start, I thought was incredible. And then I think we've got to talk about the work rate of Harshita and Kavisha. They've scored in both of these wins, and the partnerships they put on, they just look effortless. They run hard. They know their skill set. They just look purposeful. They're not letting the opposition rest and think, okay, I've got 270 runs. They're making them work. They're trying to run 2s. They're trying to run 3s. They're putting pressure on the opposition as much as they can. And there are 2 top run scorers in the series so far. Harshita has a strike rate of 81 and Kavisha, I think, of 91. So that's just high quality cricket. And I can't say enough about the way they've been putting it together. I appreciate Chamari's kind of insight as to where she needs to bat. I think that's one question that we'll have to consider going forward is, do we want Chamari as an opener? I kind of want Chamari as an opener because I think with that sort of packed field, she's someone who can clear the boundary and get them off to a flyer. And then someone like Vishmi can come in at 3 when the field is pushed out. And I think Vishmi, Harshita, and Kavisha are really, really excellent at doing that. And then 3 batters, because everyone was playing well. Nilakshi, how good was she? Just the intent she played with, providing that little impetus, right? So those middle overs is sometimes where that intent can fall away, and a couple slow overs can really kind of slow down a chase. But 50 from 28 balls, 3 sixes, she looked amazing. And just seeing that intent and what that could do to kind of break the back of the chase, even though there were a few wickets down. And then I want to shout out Sugandhika Kumari. She looked really comfortable. As soon as she got out there, everything was pinging off the middle of the bat. She was finding signals. She knew where the fielders were placed. It was a really heady knock from a number 9, right? That's one of those things. You get 7 down. I was watching with my whole family, and they're like, oh, they should be able to do this. I was like, I don't know. A number 9 is always going to be tough, but Sugandhika looked the part. She really looked good. She knew what she was doing. And we talked about how many batters are they playing. If they can bat to 9 this way with that much intent and purpose, that's going to take them a long way, and it's going to help them win games they wouldn't otherwise be able to win. So great performance.
Esty, when they were batting, at what point did you think they're going to do this? Because I, like Dominic, went through the whole roller coaster of emotions through it as well. Like, and when it got when it got to about 18 balls, I think they needed 24 runs or something. I was like, oh, this could still go the wrong way for us.
It's funny. I had a couple of friends who were in the stands, so I was, I sat with them for a couple of overs as well, and they haven't seen a lot of the women's team, so they were quite confident, and I told them, look, you guys don't know. This could go south really, really quickly. So, until it was like, 18 of 24 or something like that. Even then, you knew that if Sugandhika Kumari got out or Anushka got out, then there's panic, right?
Yeah.
And something similar happened to South Africa in their previous game against India. So, I won't say I believed until the last runs were scored.
Sugandhar never doesn't deliver with the bat though, right? When the heat's on, because we all remember that Pakistan semi-final against in the Asia Cup, right? And she came in had to get the run. She wasn't there for the winning runs, but she got us 10 runs in that game, which was essential, right? So I don't know, maybe she's just got something in her where when the pressure is on and when she can see the light at the end of the tunnel, she just can do it. It's quite an extraordinary thing. I want to get into the bowling as well, but I just want to talk a little bit more about the batting, because actually now suddenly you look at this batting lineup and you're like, with the kind of re-emergence of Harseen Perera at the top of the order, and then the Charmri, who's a kind of Elvis, and then the kind of fab three around of Vishmi, Kavish, and Harshita, you're like, that is a pretty strong kind of top five. It's as good as Sri Lanka have ever had in this gender, at least. And then suddenly, if they can get Nalakshi and Dumi kind of contributing with runs a bit, you're like, it's fairly strong in these conditions.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, there's a World Cup coming up in similar conditions in a few months' time. Like, there's suddenly something to be a little bit excited about, right, Esty?
Yeah, definitely. The batting is something that we've kind of, like I said, that first game, it felt like we were going back to, square one, right? That dependency on Athapattu. But if they can bat like this, and to be fair, Nilakshi De Silva has not had a great run of things during that period that Sri Lanka have been so successful, right, over the last 2 years. During the peaks of that, she hasn't been getting runs. It's basically been the top 3 plus Kavisha who've been doing the work. Anushka Sanjeevani has had the odd good innings. So they haven't had contributions from the other batters. But if they can play how they played in the last couple of games, I think, again, Harseen Perera is one of the names that, like, we called out so many times, not just in the last episode, but we've been talking about it for as long as I guess we've been podcasting, right? Why she's being included, because she's gotten a lot of opportunities but not really done anything with them. But she looked really good, and I thought, barring the fact that it's like 13 times or 14 times that she's crossed 30 but not got to 50, barring that, actually the way she batted was, I thought the intent was really good. There was always the kind of looking out to score runs, right? It wasn't about surviving, and I think that's important, because sometimes with Vishmi, that's one thing we see, right? That when she bats with Chamari Athapattu, she's looking more to kind of survive and stay there instead of actually trying to rotate the strike. And of course, Harshita, fantastic. I think she's going to be a massively important part for Sri Lanka if conditions are similar in India, because she plays these conditions so well, right? The way she uses her sweep, the horizontal bat shots, but can still play straight and work the singles and twos. Kavisha is another key part. So Devmi's inclusion, I think, is hugely valuable, because she's one of those all-rounders, right? Like a Kavisha or a Chamari who could deliver you 10 overs, but could come out and play a few shots, get a few quick runs. Actually, there would probably have been criticism about the way she played yesterday. She was promoted ahead of Anushka Sanjeevani, but I thought that was exactly her instruction, right?
Yep.
To go out there, get a couple of boundaries, and then the equation is, comes down drastically. So she played her part in that situation the way she needed to. Unfortunately, didn't get enough bat on ball to clear the boundary. But I think, again, Sri Lanka have to be careful that they don't get ahead of themselves. There's a long way to go for the World Cup, and they don't have international fixtures at this moment. They don't have anything scheduled. So they need to be careful about how they, manage their expectations. We need to be careful about how we manage our expectations, given like the disappointment from last year and the T20 World Cup. But it's looking good. But the thing with batting is, like, you're not always going to have, particularly in 5 months, you don't know how many of these players are going to be in form, right? And certainly, no matter who's in form, you want Chamari Athapattu to get back into the runs, and she's kind of been struggling.
Yeah.
Two more things in the batting from me before we move on to the other discipline. Firstly, I think when I was watching Harshita bat, I was like, I reckon across genders, she's probably the most technically correct batter that Sri Lanka have, because she has the whole array of shots. She's too small to bludgeon a ball across the boundary, so she's got to just use technique, and her shot selection is almost always perfect, right? And I can't think of anyone in the men's game at the moment who is as good at doing that as possible. It's just no obvious weakness. If you look at like Kusal Mendes, you'll if you and I know you shouldn't compare the genders, but you can compare technique. Kusal Mendes always gets out the same way. He gets caught like in and around the boundary. With Harshita, I can't think of how you obviously catch her out. Obviously get her out. The other batters I can all think of a not kind of obvious weakness for them. The other thing that I'll just throw in there is this is a real testament to the coaching set up around this team, right? Because you can see them coming in quite raw. This team was a really raw side 3 or 4 years ago, 2-3 years ago. And every year they're kind of just getting them more and more refined, right? And actually, I think that performance against India on Sunday, I hope isn't the kind of apex of it. That should be the new kind of, that should be the standard. But that kind of performance, I think the thing that we're most overjoyed about is we just didn't think Sri Lanka have that in them regularly. It kind of feels like we're seeing that twice in the last 2 games now. And I think that's all come from the coaching and the work that's been done behind the scenes. Right, Dom?
Yeah, I think 2 things I want to point out here is it's coming on the back of a disappointing series in New Zealand as well, right? So that I think was huge, is seeing them turn up to play and show that high quality brand of play that we'd become used to in 2024 and recovering that. Now, I agree with Estelle. Hopes are high. There's a lot of talent there. We want to see them keep it up. The one thing, and we talked a little bit about this off air, is developing a strategy for batting first, because they've won in a chase, right? We know that they're most comfortable chasing, right? All their big wins have come after a target has been set and they've been able to chase it down. So I think that's got to be one of the goals in sort of the 5 months leading up to the World Cup, is how do we set a score? What is our strategy? How do we take that confidence we have chasing even very big totals and sort of bring it into the game? And I think that's where a player like Hassani Pereira has a really big role to play. And even someone like Nilakshi De Silva, the people who bring the intent, that's crucial when you're setting, right? You can't just say, okay, we're going to play it out. We're going to play 50 balls and see what happens. But you have to bring the attack to the bowlers. So seeing Hassani, and kind of, we have to applaud the management and Chamre for finding that Hassani is going to be good in that opening role, right? Because she had previously batted at 4 for the last couple of years. I know she'd opened and batted up high before, but realizing, okay, this might be a way for us to enliven our power play batting. Props on that. I think another thing is thinking about how the order might be flexible, right, in terms of setting scores. I think Vishmi, Harshita, and Kavisha are ideal when you're chasing, right? They know exactly what to do. They know how to set the tempo of the game, especially in the middle overs. But what are the ways you can kind of use a cameo from someone like Nilakshi De Silva that allows some of these other players to play their more natural game? So I think thinking about how to activate the obvious talent, the obvious skill level that's there in those situations where they bat first is going to be important.
Esty, is there any kind of talk behind the scenes about what's happening in the next 5 months?
I haven't heard anything so far. I haven't heard anything so far, because it looks like the other teams that are going to be at the World Cup are pretty full up, because India's fixtures are against Australia and England. South Africa have got West Indies and Pakistan. So those are probably 2 teams Sri Lanka could have looked at. So it looks like teams that are going to feature at the World Cup already kind of have fixtures lined up for them. So it's going to be tough. I wonder what the plan is maybe they will go for similar to what they've done in the past for the men's team, have kind of a like a super fours kind of tournament where you get the best of the best, but that's not going to be like playing international cricket, right? Like if you watched any of the cricket in this tournament, the
Mm.
intensity is at a different level. And I know we beat India in the last game, but India's looked in many ways like such a much better, more professional side. So that will be a big concern because while you don't want to go into the tournament on the back of like too much cricket, you also want to have some kind of regular fixtures so that you're going into it with in touch, and you know which players are in touch and which players you can utilize there.
Should we talk about the bowling a little bit? Dennis put a question in, Sandra's put a few comments in. We'll get to those as well. The bowling suddenly looks a lot better at this point than it did early on. And if Doomy hasn't contributed with the bat, she definitely has with the ball, right, Dom?
Yeah, I think that's been the big thing, is that we've talked about this on this podcast so many times, that finding those wicket taking bowlers who are going to get not just contained but actually be attacking. And we saw that with Doomy. She is not afraid to flight that ball up and take wickets, and she should have even had a couple more wickets, and we'll talk about the fielding. Inoka also was good. We were critical of Inoka's inclusion, but she's again been willing to flight the ball up and put these batters in compromising situations. So it's been really good to see Daomi and Inoka working in tandem with one another. I also want to shout out Malki Madara, because I thought against South Africa she was really, really good. Sugandhika Kumari again has backed up her performances, and I think for the first time in a while, I'm starting to feel a little bit more confident in this bowling unit being able to take wickets and put pressure on the opposition. Obviously, the conditions are beneficial to the type of bowling that they do, but I think we can also think that hopefully Udeshika Prabodhini will continue her recovery and be back, because her presence in the early overs has been crucial to this team. So props for Daomi, especially as a debutante coming into the side against two big teams, against South Africa and India, to have the sort of noose to back your skill and say, I'm going to toss it up and I'm not going to try to bowl fast and hold. I'm here to take wickets. Props to her for that. Props to Inoka Ranawira for making a good comeback and for, again, doing what she does best and threatening to take wickets. The Inoka we saw the last two matches, I thought was much better than the Inoka we saw in 2024. So those are the two Daomi and Inoka and Malki Madara. We've seen a good mix, and we saw this on the batting side, of players brought back in and players brought in early in their career, both giving us something to be excited about and contributing to the team.
Esty, what have you thought about, or have you got any strong feelings about the way Charma is bowling herself at the moment?
Not particularly. I think there may have been some criticism and some stuff I agree with, in that there were periods of time where I thought tactically the bowling changes were not great. In that, I mean, you look at matchups and stuff, and you shouldn't overplay those things. But at the same time, there were periods in time where Sri Lanka just kind of allowed the game to kind of continue. One would be that in that game against South Africa, where Anari Dirksen was batting with Chloe Tryon, two right-handers out in the middle, and Sri Lanka, I think, probably bowled more than 10 overs of off spin to them, right? With Chamari, Deomi, and Kavisha operating. In the last game as well, there was a similar situation. That time, they brought Sugantika Kumari into the attack, and they were able to get the breakthrough with the left arm spinner. So I feel like tactically there were issues with the bowling changes. I think the thing with Chamari is that she wants to take on the responsibility and bowl in difficult situations, and you can't fault the player for that, right? It's just that you have to also, I think, be a bit more proactive. And if I was to compare her to someone like Laura Wolfart, I thought Wolfart was tactically and the things she was trying out, it may not have always worked, and that's not going to happen, right? Not every bowling change is going to bring you wickets. but she was proactive. She was trying to make something happen, whether it was, you know, having the field in during the first 4 deliveries of the over and then pushing it back so that they don't concede boundaries, or, you know, making quick changes between her bowlers. And of course, like Woolward has 3 or 4 medium pacers who she has to work with, right? She doesn't have the spin bowling arsenal that Sri Lanka do. So I felt like in that way, it was a bit lacking. And it's important, I think, even in wins, to look at those things, because at the end of the day, this series kind of inconsequential, right? It's about getting things right for that World Cup that's coming. So I hope they are looking into those things, because it's something that they really do need to work on and kind of have that, not reacting to things but be proactive in their decision making.
And Estelle, I'll add in too, when you have that many players who can bowl, it gives you a lot of options. It's not like they're a team that's hamstrung where, okay, we have to get our 50 overs from 5 people, right? From 5 bowlers. It's they have 6 or 7 people that they can draw from and pull from and draw into. So I think that is, you know, sort of looking at the lineup and the squad, that's a huge advantage, having so many players who can come in and pitch in with the ball. And so thinking about how do we best use that skill set to create matchups, to create positive matchups. And I think also another thing, as Estelle said, we have to kind of be critical of the fielding. I thought in both of these matches, there were a number of drop catches. There were some sloppy fielding on the boundaries as well. And granted, we chased 237 and 276, right? But that should have been 225 and 260, right? Makes it a lot easier. It's a lot of pressure to put those batters under to say you need to get these runs. So I think sharpening that fielding, and that might also be a bit related to how much they're playing. I remember watching when they were playing a lot in 2024, the fielding kind of, obviously there were still mistakes here and there, but it got a lot sharper. Yeah. And so that practice and that continual practice is going to be important. So that's a thing where I think, you know, you can't always expect the batting to kind of click perfectly and be able to pull off these chases. You got to fight for every run. So that's kind of that same mentality of when you're competing with the South Africas and India, every run matters. Every decision matters. And playing that high intensity cricket, it's draining. But I think this squad can do it. And they need to, and maybe that's what we're kind of talking about. This team plays best in those most intense moments, right? In that Asia Cup final against India. And keeping that intensity up is something that we want to see. And I think it's a testament to how hard these women have worked, that we're asking them to step up that intensity, that extra 5% to become the very best that they can be.
There's been a few comments come in. Let's get through them. Dineth has asked, catching up with the latest win against India, what do we need to do to close out the series at top? Essentially, any sort of result against South Africa should mean that we finish top. Is that right? Yeah, if we get a draw or win, we'll be able to finish top, I believe.
But if South Africa lose to India,
we're through to the final.
They have to beat us. Yeah, they have to beat us. Yeah. No, even if they do beat us, then they only have 1 win.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah. We're through. If South Africa loses to, if anything other than a South Africa win against India, we're through.
Yeah. The finals on the 11th. And I think, just to respond to Jan's written in, people still haven't realised how amazing the women's team is. What will it take? I think if they get to another final, I mean, that's 2 finals they've got to in 10 months or something.
Yeah.
10 months in August to May. I mean, people in Sri Lanka have got to start talking about them. We've talked on this pod before, ST, about how when you're in Colombo, it's mainly the stars of the men's side you see on the billboards. When you're out of Colombo, you see a lot of Charmery and a lot of the other women's players. I don't know how or why that's happened. I'm sure that there's a longer podcast in it, but go on.
No, I think there are a few more now. I was just going to say, like, a lot of my friends have been asking about the cricket. So obviously it's catching on. Um, but I do think one thing that's lacking is that it's not marketed well enough, right? It's free entry, but and it's that's posted on social media, but it's, I don't know, I feel like it just hasn't reached people that, look, you can come and watch like three good, even if it's not Sri Lanka, you're watching like two other teams that are top 5 in the world, right? So
Yeah.
to come out there and really, you know, come and watch, right? Bring your kids, bring your families and come. So that's one area I think Sri Lanka cricket also have to work on, in that it's tough, because for the men's team you don't have to do that, right? You don't have to market it. You put the fixtures out and people are going to show up. But for the women's team, there's work to be done in that area, and I think if you can really reach the people a bit more, there will be crowds, because at the moment it is mostly, from what I've seen, it's mostly players from these developmental squads, or who play for schools, or who play at club level, who come. And then you have like a small smattering of like casual fans. And my like the only thing I do with all my friends who have kids is like, bring your kids and come,
Yeah.
whether they're sons or daughters, or bring them and come, because it's a great thing to kind of experience. Because when we were growing up, we didn't have that, right? We didn't know, I don't think we even knew there was a women's team that existed. So it's a really good experience, and it's not the crowded, busy, difficult to get in thing the men's game is going to be. So it's a lot easier to get into the game. You probably have access to players as well, much more than you do with the men's team, because players are very friendly. They'll come up to your stand, they'll chat with you, they'll hand out bats, balls, gloves. um, Even the Indian team, South African team. So that access, all of that is there. It's just that I don't think it's properly reach the people that they can come and watch and experience all of this.
Yes, get involved, get down, get going, and think about how lucky and privileged you are to see these great players for free as well. Sanjit's messaged. He's messaged a lot, but I'll pick this one out. Australian women, no series till September, so they can play Sri Lanka. Also play a series against New Zealand in home conditions, as they too do not have any series currently. Not sure.
Let's
Maybe
give a shout out to Cricket Australia and Cricket New Zealand. You can organize a tri series in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Why not? You'll love it. You'll love it. Everyone loves going to Sri Lanka. And you can see it's about as close as you're going to get to kind of the conditions that you're going to have in India, mostly. I know obviously some people are going to be saying there's some parts of India that are very different conditions to Sri Lanka. That's true, but it's still closer than Perth.
But the fact is, Mark, given the venues, nobody knows what the conditions are going to be like.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. And touring is always fun. Touring is always fun. Should we move on and talk about the other things that have happened in Sri Lankan cricket this week? So last Tuesday, was it Tuesday or Wednesday, we got the news that the LPL have basically kicked out the owners of the Jaffna franchise and the Colombo franchise. The Jaffna Kings, the most successful franchise in LPL history, possibly one of the most successful T20 franchises in all of history, plus the Colombo Strikers are no more. We'll have new owners of all these groups when the LPL is played next, which I assume will be in August, which is when they've been trying to play it the last couple of years. I'll ask you guys. I mean, Dom, were you surprised to hear this, or yet another psychodrama in the world of the Lanka Premier League?
I mean, it's not surprising to hear this. Like this, the same thing happened last year, closer to the start date of the tournament, right? If I remember correctly. And it's really quite sad, because I think Sri Lanka cricket is trying to organize a top draw franchise tournament, but these owners are kind of creating a situation where players aren't sure what's going to happen. How can you recruit properly? How can you get people to sign up for the draft when you don't even know what the teams are? The other thing that will add, and I know there's been a lot of chatter online about this, is that IPL franchises, right? They're scouting players in Sri Lanka. They have their fingers all over the island, looking not just for players they're going to draft, but for net bowlers, for future talent. But they are staying very, very clear of the LPL, right? You'd imagine that these are great opportunities for IPL franchises to develop and foster their own talent in Sri Lanka, but they don't want to have anything to do with it. And I think that speaks very loud and very clear to how they think about the league and the way that it's run. That might not all fall on SLC, because this is, to be clear, run through IPG. And I think Sri Lanka Cricket might need to think a little bit more closely about what can we do to make this league look like something that these IPL teams want to invest in. Because we've seen MLC, right? So Major League Cricket in the United States, where there's far less infrastructure, far less interest in terms of people coming out to watch and play, immediately get investment from IPL teams, right? We've seen SAT20 come out. So I think it shows that the pressure is on, okay, for Sri Lanka Cricket to get this in order, right? Because if they don't get this in order, the league is going to be a failure. And it's really, really important to be a shopping window for our players to show off the talent that they have, and to grow the talent that the country has. Sorry, that was a bit long and ranty, but
no, I think it's all fair. The thing I've heard through various people on Instagram is that there's some players from both those franchises who are yet to be paid, and that's a big reason why those franchises got taken off those people. And I mean, that's such an easy thing to fix, right? And we know the people who own those teams also have the money to fix it quite quickly as well. It's not like I need to. Can you bear with me a minute to pay for it? I wonder if, Estelle, the time has come now, though, for somebody at SLC to just pick up the phone to Mr. Ambani, to the group who own the Knight Riders, and just go, hey, we've got 2 teams and we're going to give them to you. You can pick you can pick which one you want, Mr. Ambani. You can have MI Jaffna, you can have MI Colombo. We don't mind. In fact, you can even move them. I think my kind of wider thought about the LPL is that actually Sri Lanka cricket is so popular in Sri Lanka, and there is so much talent there, that it will always produce a league that will get a kind of local TV deal, and you could probably, if they're playing a domestic deal with Sri Lankan international players, you could probably get a TV rights deal of some kind to go across Asia. So you could probably, or to go across India, more importantly. So you can probably kind of make it work somehow. But it's just how big and what this scope of the league is for. Whether it's something that is actually going to, develop cricket in Sri Lanka by bringing lots of eyeballs and money to it in the kind of medium term. And part of that is developing players, or if we're just doing it because we're a test play nation and we should have a shot at least at doing a franchise league. I think we've seen that, like, if you're going to be brutal about it, we're never going to be as big as the IPL, or if we are, it's going to need this. It's a long-term project. But you've seen the way the SA20 have done it. You've even seen the way the ILT20 have done it, and Major League Cricket. There is a way you can get this tournament into more of the cricket zeitgeist, and that's by you've got to go and partner it up with the people who run the other big franchise teams. If Mr. Ambani doesn't take my call and the other IPL owners aren't taking my call, what about the guys who own Desert Vipers, like in the ILT20? What about, the guys who own the other, what about the people who own county cricket teams, or is it Victoria Cricket have got a franchise team that, in Australia that plays franchise cricket in places and stuff like that? There's loads of other ways that they can get people in to fix this. I think there's too much short-termism, and they need to think about, right, what can we do to make this league be something that people are talking about, A, exists, and B, of considerably greater value in 10 years' time than it is now. And I think too much of it is they're thinking too small. Sorry, I've been cracking on with this. Estelle, what have you got any thoughts about it? Have you heard anything on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. You have to get legit owners in, right, if you want the competition to be a success. And we've seen, I mean, in terms of cricket, we've seen decent returns over the last, since the inception. You've seen, I mean, the first couple of seasons you had like washed up players who were coming in as overseas players and stuff like that. But gradually that started improving, and you got kind of some English players who kind of knocking at the door, who played in the LPL. Then you've got like players like Gurbaz, who's now in the IPL, players like that who were kind of almost there, who played. And you can be that kind of league, right? And as you mentioned, like, we're not going to be as big. The LPL is not going to be as big as the IPL, and that it doesn't need to be as big as the IPL. It just needs to be. It needs to establish the fact that it's a legit league, so that it can draw in people who actually, sustain the investments that they put in, and like make it successful long term. So yeah, maybe it's they're due, like the Ambanis are due a call. I know years ago Mumbai was kind of interested in owning a franchise, but as Dom said as well, right, like, there is a reason why a lot of these major owners are staying away. There must be a reason. And you need to kind of crack down on that, otherwise it's not going to be a sustainable model going forward.
If you could somehow get one of these teams into the hands of the Ambanis or the group that owns CSK, or I mean Diageo and RCB, they're not going to buy a team in Sri Lanka, though. I mean, it would be Sri Lanka being owned by someone who owns whiskey brand. A Sri Lankan cricket team being owned by someone who owns whiskey brands is the most would be one of the most amazing things that have happened, and obviously one of the most obvious brand partnerships that have happened as well. But if you can getting one in, the hard part's going to get one, right? Once you get one owner in, another owner will be interested, because they'll be like, what is going on here? What are these guys doing? Once you've got two, then it'll be easy to get the rest in. And then my kind of theory would be is once you've got two, actually whoever comes in, whichever ownership group comes in, is almost more powerful in cricket and in terms of trying to get a broadcast deal than anyone else involved in this league, including whichever production company or group is involved with running it. And they almost are at a point where they dictate the terms. In this kind of same, like, if you compare it to the kind of English Premier League, the big struggle is to try and wrestle power away from the kind of top, the so-called big six, and that the whole league has some kind of power over the direction of the league. And if you compare that to the way the NFL works, where everyone has kind of an equal seat at the table, you try to kind of almost manipulate that model around to being actually in Sri Lanka, the kind of thing that could save the LPL would be if you had one team that was owned by a economic force so big that they could trample over everyone else. Some people will be watching this and listening to this and going, has Mark Machado gone mad? Is he absolutely trying to sell the future of Sri Lankan cricket to a Indian conglomerate? And I would argue that actually, I mean, this league's been kind of rumbling on for 4 or 5 years now. And every year in the kind of, the LPL is coming up because you're getting press releases about teams falling apart coming into it. And if the first step to improving that league is to try and break that cycle. And I'd also argue that rich people only put money into other rich things, invest in things because they want to get rich off it. So they're not stupid with their money. They're going to come in with a plan of how this makes money. They're just going to be slightly more longer term than the current people involved in it would be my argument for it. But yeah, I think ultimately they just need to put me in charge. I think, Estelle. Like,
maybe they should, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
you a team, maybe.
Right? He has the Ambanis on speed dial, right? So he'll, perfect.
Did you go for one of the ceremonies, the weddings?
What? Yeah. So I used to live next to Stoke Park, right, which is where their kind of residence / golf club in London is. So we're good pals, me and the Ambanis. We're not. I'm joking. I did used to live next to Stoke Park, but we're not good pals. I've never met them, and I'm sure if I did, I would irritate them. But I don't think it's I generally I don't think it's that difficult. That if the accounts are up to date and being run properly, and if there is a clear plan of when and how this tournament's going to take place and what the plan is to grow it, to get people who have a bit of vision in how to grow leagues. I don't think it's that difficult to do. I think 10 years ago, yeah, I think it might have been, but now there is so many other leagues. I mean, in the ECB are able to flog off leagues or flog off teams in the hundred for like hundreds of millions of pounds, and there is so little. When you actually get into the weeds of it, the owners have so little power. They don't even own the full team. They can't change the names and stuff like that. I know they're arguing about that, and there's issues about when or how these the contracts haven't been signed, and so on and so on. But I mean, if the ECB can do it, and the ECB are run by much less capable people than Sri Lankan cricket is, then I'm reasonably sure Sri Lankan cricket can do it. I'm just not sure that the right people have got in the room at the right time, have had the right conversations, and are thinking the right way about it. And yeah, I suppose I'm probably more outspoken about this than any other aspect of Sri Lankan cricket at the moment. It really annoys me because I just think we're like if we don't sort this out, we'll slip away in terms of developing players. And if that hasn't started to happen already, I don't know. Talking about franchise cricket, should we talk a little bit about the IPL, because it's been another kind of turbulent week for Sri Lankan players, right, Dom?
Yeah, it's been turbulent. So last week we were on here talking about Kamindu Mendis's finisher role. He had a bit of a tough go of it, and now Ishan Malinga has been switched into his spot in the SRH team. He bowled well today. He took 1 for 28 in his 4 overs. Monindu Hasaranga was dropped for a match, and then came back. He bowled okay, and then was put into a pinch hitter role and got bowled by Varun Chakravarti, kind of to be expected at this point. I will say that RR must be seeing something from him in the nets that makes them want to keep on giving him those chances in this pinch hitter role. But at this point, it's definitely been a failure. Thikshana did Thikshana things, bowled decently well. But yeah, it's been a rough go of it. Probably the guy who's had the best week is Dushmantha Chamira, who keeps on being in the squad. He had an amazing catch that rivaled Kamindu's catch. So good for him. Again, props for him for getting back off the mat with all those injuries and contributing. So it's been a turbulent week for the Lankans in the IPL.
Can I just one thing? Like, I haven't watched any of the IPL over the last week, but I really don't think the Chamira catch can be compared to Kamindu's.
Really?
Like, I know like a lot of people were talking about it online, but Kamindu's catch was one of the best I've seen, I think, because of the way the ball was traveling. It wasn't a ball coming up in the air and dipping, right? It was traveling flat towards, and the way he took it, yeah.
I was going to say, I think Kamindu's been quite unlucky to have been dropped, to be honest, because I thought he was excellent. The game when he got that catch, which I think was when we were on this time last week. Once we finished watching, I went to watch him bat, and then when he came into bat in the game a few days later over the weekend, the IPL is just so quick. It kind of time seems to work differently around it. I thought he basically got an edge on his first ball. He was super unlucky, right? I still, and going back to Wani, I just think RR has been so badly managed at the moment. And sometimes that happens in a franchise team. I also think there's a lot of issues about that squad in general. And I think Wani's a big victim of it, because I think they're trying to ask them to do way too many things at the same time, basically. Which, you know, as Sri Lanka fans, we all know A, he's capable of, but B, I mean, there's loads of other issues with that side.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. Obviously, the other big kind of news to the IPL is that 14-year-old just got a century, and you know, I'm sure in years to come we'll discover that it was actually the Sri Lankan players who would have taught him everything he knows in the camp.
Yeah.
In training to get him ready for that. But yeah, that side for me is serious. It's just quite unbalanced.
I mean, I think, Mark, the thing with Kamindu, I agree it's a little bit unfair, but it's just hard for him to get into a side with Cummins, Head, and Clausen, right? Because those are three must plays, and I'm glad that Kamindu and Eshan are the two that are kind of trading off for that fourth spot. But it is tough on Kamindu, especially as a batter, to be brought in and brought out. And it's interesting too because he's been bowling quite a bit. They definitely view him as a matchup plus.
Yeah.
He's improved his ability to bowl at pace. I think that's a big thing, right? So he's not just tossing it up in the low 80s, but he's bowling into the 90s. And I think I saw he bowled something as fast as 97. So incredible experience for these guys, especially Kamindu and Eshan Malinga. I think both of whom were not thinking they were going to get this much game time.
Yeah.
Chamir is this big. I know we talked about this a bit last
surprise,
week.
yeah.
Big surprise, right? Because I was surprised he got picked up, but actually, you know, we talked about bringing IPL teams into the LPL beneficial. I mean, he's got into this squad. He's got into this team because of stuff he's done with the Dubai Capitals, right?
Yep.
So we're seeing these teams build pathways and build knowledge about the players around that are kind of available to them. So we all say ILT 20, no one watches it, who cares about it? Well, the teams do. Like this is the road to the serious riches of the IPL, right?
Right.
And you know, all power to Chamira for taking the opportunity. I wonder if this time next week, Dasan Shanaka might get a bit of a run for the Titans because they look kind of dead set into the playoffs, and they might feel that they might want to mix things up a little bit going into it. Yeah,
that would be interesting. I think it tells you too that what the IPL teams value is the ability to produce certain kinds of performances. There are very few bowlers in the world who can do what Chamira does, right? Hit, sort of take wickets early on, hit that back of the length with a sort of skiddy action, bowl at close to 150, right? There's just a finite number of human beings in the world who have that skill set. And so seeing the IPL back players like him, and then even like Dasan Shanaka, right? Even though he might have fallen out of favor with SLC, GT still sees him as a guy who can come in and finish a game, right? These are not just charity spots that they're giving to players. They believe in the talent and the skill set that these guys have shown. And I think it's actually kind of an important lesson for SLC to take. It's not about who produces the most for you in that particular moment, but backing the guys who have those special talents, right, is something that's important to keep an eye on.
Guys, should we kind of leave it there for today? We've got a lot to go on. The women are will no doubt not let Sri Lanka down in the way the men have the last few years, but that is the nature of just not the Sri Lanka cricket of the world. We have been the Murali End. We'll be back in the next few days. As I said, there's a lot going on. We'll definitely try and do the live show this time next week because we might, probably, quite likely have a final to report on. Mm-hmm. It's going to be against India, one of the biggest and best teams in the world. So let's not get too excited, right, Estelle? Let's not start booking tickets to India for that World Cup final. 90,000 screaming Sri Lanka fans in Ahmedabad. AKD and Modi going around the stadium in the golf cart, waving at all of us. I cannot wait. It's going to be incredible.
But at least book the tickets for the games that are coming up. Go to those matches in Sri Lanka, please.
Yeah, go to those matches. Don't apply for that Indian visa just yet. I'll finish on one last message. Sanjit said, visited Sri Lanka in June with family, finally for a week. Hope to visit beautiful places and possible visit team players too. I don't know how hard or easy it is going to be to get to visit team players. I'm not going to comment about that, but you're going to have a great time in Sri Lanka, Sanjit, wherever you're going, because people will, when you read the guidebooks, they'll say that every precious gem you can find in Sri Lanka apart from diamonds, and they are wrong. The people are the diamonds, and you'll discover that when you get there. That you come for the weather, but you stay for the people. Right, we've been Murali End. On that cheesy note, I'll end this live stream.